you everyone for taking the time out to join our inaugural bug meeting. We hope to make it an annual endeavor. And I wanted to start off the series of talks by giving an overview of some new features which we've introduced in Pegasus 5.0. So as Eva mentioned, Pegasus 5.0 was had a long release cycle, like we were developing on it for more than a year for a variety of different reasons. And with Pegasus 5.0, which was released in November 2020, we've tried to revisit some things, namely in terms of like the APIs which users interact with Pegasus. So we've introduced a new and a fresh Python 3 API which allows users to compose workflows and in addition also submit and monitor workflows and configure catalogs. So we've put our eggs in our Python API. It's been developed brand new from ground up. And as part of this effort, we've also decided to modernize our format, and we have come up with a new YAML-based format to describe workflows. Again, as an end user, you don't really need to worry about the format too much, but just focus on the API. And unlike earlier iterations, this new API allows you to create each of the catalogs that Pegasus relies on. For example, the site catalog, transformation catalog, replica catalog, and the properties. Pegasus 5.0 has Python 3 support, and by that, what I mean is all Pegasus tools are Python 3 compliant now. 5.0 release, however, does require Python 3 on the workflow submit node. So if your jobs can run on nodes that have Python 2, but when you're generating your workflows on your submit node, you do require Python 3 install. And we've also made our Python API available as a pip package for workflow composition and monitoring. And we've also retooled our Java and our APIs to emit workflow descriptions in YAML, like the new Python API. All right, so with Pegasus 5.0, in addition to the new API, we've adopted YAML as our format of choice. So in 5.0, we changed the format for the stack workflows, all the catalogs, and even the provenance records that are generated by Kickstart. And we have also updated our monitoring tooling to automatically pass Kickstart formats in both old XML-based format and the YAML-based format. For end users, we are providing catalog converters. So let's say you had your existing handwritten catalogs for Pegasus, you can use the tools that we provide to update your catalogs to the new format. We also heavily reworked our documentation. So we pretty much redid the documentation, and also we are displaying the documentation in a new format. So it's in the read the doc style documentation using restructured text. And we've tried to simplify our user guide by breaking it into two sections. So there's a user guide and a separate reference guide. We overhauled our tutorial, and we have adopted Jupyter Notebooks as our preferred medium of training new Pegasus users. So I would encourage all of you to check out the tutorial later today by Max on how you can learn how to use Pegasus in a Jupyter Notebook framework. Another thing which we really focused on in Pegasus 5.0 was, we wanted to lower the bar for people to start running simple workflows. So, we strive to have this notion of a zero configuration required to submit to a local HT Condor pool. So let's say like, you have your desktop, you do an RPM install of Condor and an RPM install of Pegasus, you can literally get started running workflows with zero configuration. And you don't need to configure any catalogs. Pegasus will automatically create sensible default for the various sites in question. And by default, Pegasus has a notion of a local site that, as you all know, refers to the submit host. and then your jobs get mapped to a site called Condor Pool, which refers to a local Condor Pool on your submit list. And then on the right, I have a short snippet on how you can run a simple hello world workflow using the new Python API. Another thing which we have done is that, in our efforts to make Pegasus easier to use, we've also decided to embrace Condor file transfers as our preferred choice of transferring files in a default sense. So, we changed the default configuration in Pegasus from shared FS to Condor IO. And the reason why we are doing it is a couple of reasons. One, more and more of our Pegasus users end up running workflows in a distributed environment like OSG, along with running historically on the on HPC clusters. So we just have made this switch so that it's easier for people to get started, and you can still change back your data configurations to shared FS if you want to rely on traditional HPC semantics for your data management or workflows. So, just a simple pointer for existing users. If you're running currently in shared FS, you need to set the data configuration property specifically in your properties file. Another thing in Pegasus Fibo on the data management side is, we've decided to separate out the notion of input replica catalog, which a user provides to Pegasus so that Pegasus can discover the locations of the input data sets. And then by default, Pegasus will also register outputs in a SQLite based replica catalog in your workflow submit directory. And this gets generated once per hierarchical workflow. And the reason why we are doing it is so that, it becomes easier for people to start doing data reuse, which is a powerful feature in Pegasus that enables users to, prune their workflows based on existence of data sets from their previous runs. So in Pegasus plan, we have a new reuse option where you can point to your previous submitters, and then Pegasus can pick up the locations of the registered output from there and use it to prune your workflow. In hierarchical workflows, we've tried to streamline like the data management in terms of handling of data dependencies between Pegasus workflow jobs and compute jobs. So historically in hierarchical workflows, this sort of transition between sub workflows and compute jobs and the data transfer handover didn't work seamlessly out of the box. So we have tried to address this in Fibo release, where you can, in your hierarchical workflow, specify that I have a sub workflow or Pegasus workflow that generates an output file, and then there's a child compute job that relies on it, and Pegasus will just set up your data dependencies for it automatically. Some other data management improvements which we've rolled out is, more fine-grained control about bypassing staging of files. So at a per file, executable, or container level. So by bypass staging, what we mean is that, let's say you have your data sets at a particular location, and you don't want them to be staged separately using the Pegasus added data staging jobs, but have the job within the input data sets directly. You can use that. We've completed our loop on integrity checking. So in addition to user data, we are also integrity checking user executables and application containers. In Pegasus Transfer, we've introduced support for WebDAV, and we've also introduced support for generating outputs to multiple output sites. So historically, you could run your workflow, get Pegasus to run on multiple execution sites, but have outputs transferred only to one output site. So with Fibo, you can actually get Pegasus to transfer the generated outputs to multiple output sites. As we have introduced data management capabilities in Pegasus over the years, in Pegasus Transfer, we've ended up supporting a wide variety of protocols. I think at last count, we had probably 12 or 13 protocols supported. And each of these protocols had a slightly different way of specifying credentials. So in Fibo, we've taken a step of allowing users.
Hi. Hi, Malak. How is it going for you?
Allowing users to specify their credentials in a common file, which you can put in your .pegasus credentials.com directory, and then the credentials will be shipped along with the jobs. And we have also introduced in the Pegasus Planner a pre-flight check, where if the planner detects at planning time that a job will require a credential, it will try to check for its existence, so that we can fail early on and tell you the credential doesn't exist, rather than your workflow starts and then jobs start failing. On the monitoring front, we introduced a variety of new improvements. We have introduced Unicode compatibility for our monitoring bases. So we are enforcing a consistent UTF-8 environment. And in addition, in Kickstart records, there were a lot of useful information about the memory usage of your jobs. We started recording that information in our monitoring database, and we may present it to the user along with average CPU utilization. So we have updated the Pegasus dashboard to reflect these metrics, and also Pegasus statistics. And the memory reporting is pretty useful for creating application profiles. So you can see in one shot, what are the max memory usages of different types of jobs in your workflow. Another thing which we have introduced in Pegasus is initial support for CWL. So as CWL has become popular, we started looking into it, and we worked on a Pegasus CWL converter. It's a command line tool that we make available to our users, where you can take your CWL described workflows, and it will convert them into the new Pegasus formats, and then you can run your workflows doing that. We are interested in hearing back from our users if they find this support useful, and if you would like to see improvements. I will encourage you guys, all of you, to contact us on our support channels. And this brings me to the end of my talk.